11. Bizarre CIA X-Files Unclassified. Number 11. West Germany Flying Saucers. On July 9, 1952, a sworn eyewitness testimony took place in front of a judge by a former 48-year-old German mayor and his young daughter. They both recently escaped the eastern side of the Soviets. He reported to the CIA about a strange object that was in the distance that his daughter pointed out while riding his motorcycle outside the town of Hasselbach. He then further investigated what was going on in a forest near the Soviet zone and saw something that resembled a large frying pan. He described the object about being 15 meters wide, and it landed on the eastern side. He then went on to talk about the extraterrestrials that walked out of the spacecraft as wearing some type of metallic shiny clothes and were investigating something on the ground. He immediately thought it was some type of Soviet military technology. Number 10. Area 51 test flights. In August 2015, the CIA released a story, as well as these photos of aircraft testing at Groom Lake, or also known as Area 51. The strip of useless desert was originally called Area 51, but in order to attract well-known pilots to this test site, they then dubbed it Paradise Ranch, or Dreamland. People who worked there called themselves ranch hands. They admitted that choosing a location to test the secret aircraft was difficult, but due to the smoothness of the dry lake bed, it could be used as a runway, and the isolated area near the Nevada test site would keep their experiments a secret. Groom Lake would prove to be an ideal place to test the U-2 Recon safely and securely. Parts of the aircraft were discreetly transported inside cargo planes from Burbank, California. A high-speed launch of the U-2 Lockheed took place on a dry lake bed in 1951 and was the first test of this aircraft. This is what the CIA is willing to admit. There could be a lot more that they're not. Number 9. How to investigate a UFO. When the USA was preparing for a possible attack from the Soviet Union, they investigated almost every unknown flying object that popped up into their radar. With UFOs becoming a concern to national security, a guidebook was released, giving instructions on what to do in this bizarre situation. There are 10 guidelines given on the CIA's website on what to do if you think you spotted one. Many of the UFOs were believed to have been possibly a newly developed Soviet weapon and were not from extraterrestrial origins. Many studies from CIA-sponsored researchers that took place and began in 1952. This was known as Project Blue Book. A few steps included examining witnesses, documentation, discouraging false reporting, and gathering physical evidence. Number 8. Belgian Congo UFOs. In 1952, two disc-like objects were spotted hovering over uranium mines in southern area of the Congo in Africa. The two discs were described as fiery plate-like objects that could fly in zigzag shapes. The objects could fly in both vertical and horizontal directions, and were about 800 to 1,000 meters in the sky. The inner core of the aircraft reportedly didn't move. In response, a fighter jet was sent out to investigate the UFO. The witness, Pierre, was known as a well-respected officer and pilot, and noticed the aircraft was giving off an extremely frightening noise. Number 7. Flying saucers. In March 1949, a U.S. government document was released with the subject of flying saucers from Army Sergeant Clifford Stone. He states a few facts about these sightings, claiming that there is very little possibility that they are from weather balloons or anything the U.S. is capable of creating. The odds of these being foreign aircrafts are slim to none due to the range that they would need. Guided aircraft at that time was about several thousand miles, and it was far too advanced for the U.S. Air Force or any known technology at that time. He seems to be completely baffled by the witness testimonies and doesn't know what to believe. Number 6. Unidentified object over Norway. On September 18th at 1400 hours, 3 Norwegian lumberjacks were outside working near the city of Kirkenes and noticed a flat, round object that was hovering above them in the forest. They claimed it was about 500 meters above their head, and described it to be about 15 to 20 meters in diameter. While they were looking at it, it flew away at a high velocity in the northwest direction. All 3 witnesses swore by what they saw, and the description from these individuals all matched. Would all 3 of these people make this up and lie to the government for no reason? Or was there something from out of this world? Number 5. UFOs in Spain. In 1952, an unidentified flying object flew across the sky in Barcelona and across skies of French Morocco. A man was walking across Jose Antonio Avenue when he noticed a strange flying object at an extremely high speed, about 2 kilometers above the ground. The document claims that it didn't look like an airplane or anything like the common perception of a UFO. It did seem to be coming from the direction of the El-Prat Airport. The object appeared to be more rocket-shaped than disc-shaped, and left behind a bizarre smoke trail. The smoke came from 2 different engines, and they merged together into one streak. Could this be a form of alien aircraft that isn't talked about as much? Number 4. Flying saucers in Morocco. 3 UFO sightings happened in Morocco, all within 5 days of each other, and were reported in the same document as the one in the UFOs from Spain. 2 of these UFOs were on the same day, but in different cities in Morocco. The first one happening in the city of Menz on the 11th of June, 1952 at 1300 hours, when 2 witnesses reported seeing a bright spot moving at seemingly impossible speeds without making any noise. He claims that a Lockheed T-33, as you see in this photo, flew at a nearby base but was extremely slower in comparison. The T-33 can reach speeds of 600 miles an hour. The next two sightings happened on the 15th, the first being in a small village in the north, and they claim to have seen white circular flames with smoke trailing it before it mysteriously vanished. The other one was reported by a pilot in Casablanca, but this one was not reported by the Meteorological Bureau. Number 3. Flying saucer photos. This photo here was captured in Minnesota in October 1960 and was released by the CIA's website and labeled it as an amateur photo of an alleged UFO. It seems to show a large oval of light. It's hard to be sure of anything definitive in this photo. There wasn't a document to go along with these two. The other one is taken over Sheffield, England in 1962 and displays 5 black disc-shaped objects. Although the photo does seem a tad old, it's proof that we don't always know what's going on in our own skies occasionally. Number 2. Flying saucer problem. On the 14th of October 1952, a memorandum was signed by Ralph L. Clark on the subject of the flying saucer problem. He claimed that this problem needed to be addressed by working together more often and researching extensively. This National Security Archive addressed some important people to come to the meeting and try to bring a solution to this. This included John Stamford, the Major General for the U.S. Air Force. He gave a press statement and explained that he received thousands of reports and has tried to explain them as best as possible. He claims that most of the objects he came in contact with were hoax or misidentified Allied aircrafts, but a large percent of this came from credible sources and still remained unexplained. Is it possible he knew about alien life? Number 1. Soviet flying saucers. This document was written about unconventional military aircraft that they believed the Soviets were using. The Canadian government was plotting the construction of flying saucers with great secrecy, hoping to use them as future weapons of war, and this was 6 years before the development of the Avro car. It claims that German engineers had successfully designed a flying saucer towards the end of World War II, but never had the chance to put it to use. They claim that when the Red Army was marching towards Berlin, it's very possible that the Soviets uncovered Nazi blueprints, or possibly suggesting that a scientist was captured who was working on it. A German scientist by the name of George Klein claims that flying saucers were produced in factories in 1941. He goes on to describe the capabilities of this aircraft, claiming it can go about 1,300 miles per hour. The only problem was that they weren't able to mass reproduce it because of the difficulty in finding the resources. Eventually they succeeded in 1945 and found a solution. The Nazi scientists who began building the successful flying saucers were not able to destroy them in time, and the Soviets seized the models of them as well as the resources. The rest of this document explains other sightings in Africa and Iran, believed to have possibly been from the German designs.